Okay.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome to Quick Take from Nairametric. I'm speaking with Dr. Ayodele Oni, who is a legal practitioner and also um, an energy expert. He's a legal practitioner and also an energy expert. He's a senior partner at Bloomfield. So we'll be talking about the new NERC regulation, the MAP regulation on pricing, on meter pricing, and the fact that people cannot get their meter from private investor. First and foremost, I just want to know your take on it. Is this a step in the right direction, or what's your general take on it?
Well, it's a step in the right direction because without metering, we can't really make progress in the power sector because if you don't meter, it's either you are undercharging or overcharging because you then be doing estimated billing. Recall that there have been rules around estimated billing, capping what estimated billing can be. They've modified the rules, they've done all sorts. This is not the first metering program. There have been a number of them um, which have not succeeded. Now, what makes this different and the will to see it through and the bankability are the issues that can distinguish it. I've always said that Nigeria's problem isn't good policies. Nigeria's problem usually is whether there's a political will to see it through and
Mm.
whether implementation will be done as should be.
Yeah, I was going to say that because we hear about this metering issue, this meter deregulation, but most of the time people still don't know like who the vendors are, who the meter providers are, and so they still depend on accessing, the discos. Like that's like their primary source of how to get meter. And discos, the issue has always been we don't have meters, you have to wait your turn and things like that. So I don't know whether this new regulation or this new move, address that issue of, who are the people who where you can have. In fact, I used to hear about manufacturers, meter manufacturers, but I've never seen any, local manufacturer of meter in Nigeria. Anybody talk about them? So is the government doing enough, to address that, to orient people on that particular aspect?
The thing is that it's not just a disco thing now. There are meter asset providers who've always been, to be honest. I mean, there's been the map arrangement, there's been national metering, there've been a few arrangements. Now, what you then have in this case is a situation where, with respect to metering, it's not only discos, and it's not a disco thing, is guys who are shortlisted who have the technical competence to provide or render that service. It's just that the meters have to be their standards, right? The meters have to be met, and it's public. You could go to next website. You could even Google to know who it is. There's just standards, and it will be smart, and it can be integrated with the relevant disco networks. That's the way. That's my understanding of reading. I think it was an order issued by NERC in that respect. So my own understanding is that it's not discos in that sense. It's that you have meter asset providers, and then it's deregulated. That's part of the reasons why it's deregulated, and the pricing is not even necessarily the same, right? It's first they reviewed the prices upward from around 50 something to 80 something for single meter and for single phase, and for the three phase from around 109 to about 143 44,000 naira. So it's also not a case where I think that's, for me, that looks only indicative, such that you have a competitive bidding process, and then customers are provided with a choice of authorized vendors who they can buy from. So it's not just one person. So issues like cost of the meters is regulated so that you can enable customers acquire the meters from maps of their choice on competitive open market pricing. You know, and you would have a transparent bidding framework. to support that arrangement. So it's not necessarily that there's a single price. There's also an indicative arrangement, and you can provide services. You can do your um, you can do your own transaction without necessarily looking at what the other person is doing, or benchmark. You can benchmark, but there's the room for flexibility around the pricing.
Yes, I hear you, sir. And again, there's this issue of, like I said before, because what I discovered when I looked into this whole thing was that there are even some private vendors, some manufacturers, some installers and whatnot that work with discos. So they supply to discos, and discos, supply to their customers, because people relate. I mean, the end users relate more with the customers than others. And that's why I'm asking the question: that is NERC itself, the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Body, are they doing enough, to ensure that people know these individuals, these private investors, these private providers that are in the field, that people can go to and purchase meters from them? Yes,
Okay.
the deregulation is out there. Yes, the policies are out there, but is there enough communication to the end users on the simplicity and the seamlessness on how to obtain meter?
Okay, that's a good point. I've always even personally said to NERC that they need to do much more around publicity, right? Historically, I'm of the view that they don't do enough around publicity. They're doing a lot of interesting regulations. They are trying to lead in terms of quality of regulations, maybe enforcement to a lesser extent, creativity and all of that. But in terms of letting people know what you're doing, what's happening, they've improved, but there's still a long way to go in terms of letting people know who, for example, who these meter set providers are, the process and all of that. I think there's need for more publicity, right? More public awareness around those issues. I don't think they're doing enough around that. I think there's room for a lot of improvement.
Exactly, exactly. Let's move a little bit to investment,
Yeah.
because it's another big issue when it comes to metering, meeting the metering gap. According to, I think, NEC data also show that there are about 5.9 million electricity users who are depending on, the billing model, who are on metered currently, out of the 30 million pool of people that say they are registered electricity user. So, and the question has always been investment. There's low investment, there's low liquidity. People are not, there's no money in that sector. What can the government, NEC, DISCO, all the players, involved? What can they do to encourage investment, particularly when it comes to meeting the metering gap, in the
Okay,
country,
so
and reaching out to people?
part of what they've done is this deregulation. When you deregulate, you allow for competition, you allow for one, you just set standards, right? That the meters need to meet these requirements for each network and all of that. You set requirements and you don't overregulate. As long as you overregulate, you're going to have challenges in any sector that's overregulated, or there is subsidy and all of those issues. You can always give subsidies, yes, but you have to be creative the way you do it. So that people go all out, they go finance, they are sure that they are going to get paid. There's no government in the middle saying, oh, we're the ones who will pay you. Customers can pay directly, they get their monies. If they buy the meter for 2 million, they're able to sell it, or for 200K, they're able to sell it at a profit, right? Rather than having a regulated pricing arrangement, or having a middleman that will be responsible for paying, and there are delays, and the guys have borrowed monies from the bank and can't pay back, or miss some payments milestones, such that when they go back to the banks can't lend them money, because the the companies that do credit checks say they're indebted, or they have challenges repaying. So one thing banks want to be assured of, and it's a bankability issue. Banks want to be sure that there's a market for that thing. Yes, there's a market. They are going to get paid, and they will get enough revenue to be able to pay back the loan and any interest and that revenue will be available for the tenure of the loan. So I guess when stuff like this is being done, you want to be creative and you want to look at it from a bankability standpoint. If you look at it from a bankability standpoint, then you would understand how best to structure it. So that's always been a problem, because no one is going to, very few people can afford to buy those meters as even meters asset providers or investors. They need to get some form of financing, right? But the banks need to be sure that they can pay back. And in Nigeria, there's the huge metering gap. So that already shows that there's a market. It's just the structure around ensuring that they get paid and ensuring that they can then pay the banks. So if the banks, if the banks can have a line of sight to their revenue or to their income or to getting repaid, then it won't be a problem.
Yes, I think I agree with the fact that there should be incentive in terms of structure, that encourage, more fairness in pricing, more fairness, in return of investment. Because if someone wants to invest, you have to be sure that you get whatever it is that you're putting your money into. Oh, I think one more question I would like to ask before I think I go to the last question would be the issue of manufacturer. We've had a lot of conversation around local manufacturers of meters. They said, oh, in fact, I think there's a quota for the numbers of meters that should be manufactured in Nigeria. And somebody has intended that one of the reasons why we can't just import meters into the country or bring meters to the country at a relatively cheaper price, a relatively efficient price, is that there's this quota for manufacturers that, they must be produced in Nigeria. And we also understand the economic climate of the country, how hard it is to produce whatever it is that you are into, the struggles of manufacturer effects, economic challenges, inflation, and whatnot. My question would be that, if we look at it from a very comprehensive point, is it helping? Is it aiding? Is it sustainable? Given the fact that there's this quota for local manufacturers in terms of meter production in the country. Should that be the case, or should we just make the market free and open for everybody?
For me, I know there are local content regulations in oil and gas and also in the power sector that make provision around who you buy from, what you buy, and all of that. And I know there are policy decisions around encouraging local manufacturers. Now, the thing for me in the power sector has always been for the sector to work. Before you even begin to talk about local content, if things don't work, there's no issue around local content. So for me, it's first to see progress, substantial progress, before emphasis on local content. Because if there's no market, or if the market is not working, you understand, then there's nothing to be sold, there's nothing to be bought, there's no good structure that would make manufacturing meters in Nigeria bankable so that people can lend them money. So for me, it should first be a free, open market. Then subsequently, as the market develops, of course, there'll be local guys who are doing stuff. And to the extent that they meet certain quality specifications, government in particular should lead the way by supporting them. Say all ministries, departments, agencies of federal, state should patronize those people. I always think government should lead the way. And then when others see that the government is buying, those things are good quality, then private persons can begin to buy. Generally, that's the way I see it. Because the Electricity Act, I don't think it goes into speaking to metering specifically and all of that. There are a lot of orders and regulations from NERC in the past, in the present, in May, even this year, I think recently there's a July set of regulations. Of course, that's more around embed, not taking on new energy capacity trading, but the regulations around metering and all of those historically. So I think that in terms of enforcing particular quotas, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense as things currently stand. It's more around government leading the way. You can have policy statements where all ministries, departments, agencies of federal government and states buy, then they lead the way. But that's even sufficient business then people can then begin to say, particularly if they are slightly cheaper and they are same quality. It's market, right? It's a free market. It's about
It's
pricing
market.
and quality, particularly for mass products like meters.
Yes, it's market, but there's always this conversation around local manufacturers, local content. And I hear you saying that, yes, but it has to be within the framework of what is obtainable currently, what is realistic currently. And I get that.
Right.
Let me ask this last question. I know we're talking about meter and we're talking about, metering gap, but in your own experience, your own expert experience, what would you say is the biggest challenge that is facing the power sector currently? What is the biggest issue right now?
Okay, for me, the biggest issue is still around transmission and distribution. And distribution, including the metering we are discussing. Transmission capacity to be able to transmit substantial quantities. I feel that generation isn't a problem. If we fix transmission, fix distribution, we have more than enough generation capacity and more than enough people who want to invest but cannot even find bankable projects because distribution is a problem. Many times the distribution companies don't want to do deals. There's a lot of market indiscipline, um, poor infrastructure. Many of these guys borrowed monies to buy the assets and even borrowed monies that they are supposed to use as their own equity. So I think it's across distribution and transmission, poor transmission infrastructure. For distribution is metering, is marketing discipline. Also, NERC to an extent does not sufficiently enforce its rules, and at times it's political influence. But more recently, things seem to have picked up. But those historical challenges have stunted the growth of the sector, so that even if you correct them, you don't begin to see substantial results immediately. But a good thing that states now have the capacity to create their own electricity market. How many succeed and how much success we see is a different conversation. So I think we're
Yes.
making some progress.
How many can actually do that? How many can actually, get the job done? It's one thing to have the policies in place. It's one thing to say, okay, states, you have the power, but how many can actually do that? Mr. Oni, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I know your insights are always very, very comprehensive and robust. I really appreciate all the time this
Thank you
morning.
very
Thank you
much
very
for
much.
having me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoy your day then.
You too, sir. You too, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.